Hi, this is Shoshana Burgett from Color Karma. Welcome to Color Karma After Dark. This evening, I have my partner in crime, Ryan Stanley, Senior Director of Color Materials at PVH.
Hey.
Hey. I've got Koskia Bello, Senior Director of Design of Sportswear and Golf at Centric Brands.
Hey.
Hey. And I have Jason DeApril, Color Manager at PVH.
Hello.
Hi, welcome, guys. So this week we are talking about innovate or imitate and the different pros and cons of both. And I'm just going to start with a quick example of, designers work day and night, but you get to the runways and there's these new fashion designs, new types of materials, new types of colors, everything we're looking at. But, within 12, 18 weeks, you can have imitated copies of it very quickly that are meant to look or represent. And there's pros and cons and all the debates about which one is which. But the impact it has on your design process and how you go to market is going to be different. So I'm going to kick this off with Ryan. Do you want to talk about, innovate or imitate, or a little bit of both?
Yeah. I think there's a huge opportunity between the two, and depending upon what somebody is trying to achieve in the market, kind of might lead you down one path or the other. What's dangerous about innovation versus imitation is typically I've found people who are imitative don't realize it or are entirely unaware. And again, like slippery slope, if you're unaware, bad things can happen. And a few examples I think we've talked about separately is, Blockbuster versus Netflix, Kodak versus digital photography, right? If you're not prepared to innovate and you've only ever imitated, you may be tricking yourself. One of the best examples in regards to innovation versus imitation for design that I've come across was a designer. We were doing educational classes with a bunch of designers, and we were talking about differences in metamerism and in constancy. And typically a brand wants to manage those things, right? You don't want different components of a garment to be metameric to one another or inconstant, because you don't want it to, be green in one light and brown in another light, purple and gray kind of a thing. So we were talking about managing metamerism and constancy across styles and within a mixed media style.
Right.
After the meeting, this guy comes up to me and, hey, Ryan, can you engineer something to be inconstant? Like, what if I wanted it to be metameric? It's like, well, why on earth would you do that? Well, I think it'd be really cool if we made a shirt and, under a fluorescent light inside, it just looked like a normal shirt or a regular dress shirt. But then when you walked outside under daylight, bam, like the logo pops or like a design would pop out. That's innovation.
Absolutely.
That's leveraging your knowledge and experience and putting a new twist on it to achieve something exciting and different, right? Whereas imitation, I think, relies on somebody else to come up with the idea first. And then it's just sort of like, I'm going to stick the logo here instead of here, right? I'm going to make the logo fancy. I'm going to do something different with it, but you're still kind of doing the same. You're still doing the same thing. You're just doing it in a slightly different way, as opposed to coming up with an entirely new concept.
That's how it's a great example. And you and I've talked about that is, some guy who has a shirt and it's all cool during the day, but maybe it's straight from, if we're ever in the office, going from office to club. And the minute you walk in the club, to your point, you get boom, and all of a sudden the clothes do something else. There's hidden, brighteners in the fabric or something we can take.
Well, that's imitation. Yeah. So I remember exactly. Remember exactly what had happened there, where we were trying to streamline production. We were trying to, the front panel was printed and the back panel was piece dyed. Right. And we couldn't figure out how to match the color. And when I looked at the curve, I was like, wait a minute, something's wacky with this thing. And I looked at it under a black light, and they had printed the front panel on optically dyed ground. So yeah, you're exactly right. We talked about like this guy who buys it, probably will never buy it again on the off chance he goes into an area with a black light. He goes to, get a date, and, he looks all silly
Right,
or they think it's fantastic, but
taking it though and making it creative, taking that metamerism and making it into a creative way instead of the oops or mistake. And so, yeah, that's still that innovation, but learning from those errors, to your point. But let me go to Koskia. What do you think? Imitate, innovate?
Same, I agree with Ryan. That is a perfect example because I myself have, well, I'll give you two examples. And negatives and positive of both scenarios, right? So if I work for a manufacturing company and they have a strong business in a specific category of styles and want to keep that strong business going, sales is going to be very afraid of anything innovative in that category, right? So we want to update this, make it a little bit newer and fresher, but still fill the same need because we want to maximize and keep those dollars.
Right.
But there's always room for innovation. Like now for this group or this delivery or this account, we want to come up with something totally brand new. So I live in the space where I get to do both. And so that's where it can help and hurt. So something totally new in a space where there's proven record history could really burn us. Whereas something new where it's expected and there is no history could be fantastic. But yet there's also the possibility that it might fail. So that's something you sort of reach out and try, but there has to be space for both, right?
Balance. B is for balance. One of my favorite sentences. And to your point is, if the brand has a very good brand, strong brand, right? Introducing or taking that innovation too far might be too risk adverse. You might want to start in a lateral category or different category and tinker. But to your point, we want to still innovate. We still need to tinker, because if you just stay the way you are, you're going to be blindsided by some competitor who can take the risk and say, well, what's the harm? I'm going to take a risk. I'm a startup. And if I fail, I fail. But this is my vision, right? If you can't tinker inside a big brand, then you're going to be that dinosaur too. So to your point, it's B for balance. Great point.
Complacency
Jason.
is the enemy of progress. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jason, what do you think?
And adding to the B for balance, the other thing that they say about imitation, they say it's the highest form of flattery. But is it really? There are dangers in imitating where you just become complacent in what you're doing, and everything that you do is just a mimic, a copy of something that somebody else has done.
Where's the challenge?
Where's
Exactly.
the challenge?
And to Kaskia's point, I mean, there is comfort in doing something that has been done a million times. But if you want to innovate and get out there and change something, I think that is what will catch people's eyes. Right now, in our industry, in other industries, there's a looming opportunity out there for anybody in innovation with this metaverse. That's just out there. And I think it's going to be a few years until companies sort of get a handle on it and utilize that to their advantage, to which point, once they figure that out, then all the imitation will come across, and then everybody will start doing the same thing.
First people into the industries typically are the innovators, and then you have the oncoming wave of imitators that just try to follow suit.
Right.
So I've always been working with leading edge or bleeding edge technology, and you will always have those companies who are willing to partner and take that risk with an OEM, a manufacturer, and do that. And to you guys earlier, Kaskia's point is that risk, right? But if I want to go to, let's use the example of Burberry, right? We know that Burberry pattern. It's very clear. It's very brand. It has a heritage,
Iconic.
right? It is iconic, right? But man, there's great technology out there that can innovate and still be true to that iconic, whether or not that is printing, whether or not that's the material underneath, knitting and seamless knitting. Can you imagine now seamless knitting with threads on demand and doing that where there's not one seam, one stitch in there, right? There is technology that still enables designers to be true to that technology, true to that brand and its history, and yet still be creative and innovative. And I think Ryan also hit it on the head with his example is when design comes forward and says, can I do this? This goes back to the constant, we need to be partners, right? Because you may not know the latest, I assume you do, but yeah. What's the latest material that can fluoresce under this, but still be flexible and have a smooth hand feel of bamboo and be cool to the touch and all this craziness, right? Because textile, it's all over the place, right?
Rubberized heat transfers.
But all of a sudden, when you know that technology, more lights go off. That's the tinkerer. It's like, wow,
Right.
I could do this.
Yeah, education is the mother of innovation. Complacency is the father of imitation.
There you go. So if I go back to that, I mean, because you said you have the opportunity to do both where you are.
Yeah.
Right? What
Yeah.
are some of the fun things that innovation brings when you do that?
For example, I'm working on a new, younger, more athletic line, and it's being targeted towards, tennis, active pickleball. So what I've done with it's actually the rubberized heat seal is taking it and decompressed it in the same texture as a pickleball or either the paddle or the ball. And it came out so cool. And that's exciting.
Right? That's fantastic, right? You can
Yeah.
form, you think about these one-piece bras and stuff, you can form and fit and make patterns and all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
All this incredible stuff. I saw some samples from a company where they're trying to create a lenticular behavior by printing directly on the fabric. And what it can do is just phenomenal.
You're talking about a form of the material, like you can deform it and it moves back, or you're talking about something like lenticular holography that you're actually, printing the different layers into the material.
It's trying to use different angles.
Yeah.
Printed on the material, so it's on the surface, so that you look at it from one angle and it shifts to another image when you're on the other. And what's nice also is it's tactile.
Yeah, lenticular holography. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I didn't know if you meant for the material though. Got you.
No,
following
for
that.
that. So, and it's the tactile component is wonderful, right? I love all of you guys, but I'd love you all in the same room and feeling. We like tactile. We're going back to tactile. We want to touch stuff, right? That's fun. Jason, what do you got? What are your thoughts?
Really, I mean, and I think I said it before with the imitation. I mean, you look at Hollywood movie posters, they are carbon copies of one another. And then that translates from that industry to any industry, food, textiles, graphic design. I was a graphic designer for quite some time. I worked closely with a lot of designers that really just wanted to get an example of something and then from the ground up rebuild it. And sad to say, a lot of those people are just stagnant in their careers and they haven't moved. So I mean, I am opposed to the imitation. But I mean, again, there is room for that, again, in the comfort and such of the, the idea of it. So
Okay.
Anyone competent in what they do moves to streamline their processes so they can pay attention to a higher class of problems. I agree with Jay a lot. I think somebody who's stuck in that rut of imitation without Koskia, you're in an awesome situation where you have the opportunity to do both. You want to maintain certain instances. So, okay, I'm going to imitate, but you also have the ability to innovate in particular instances, right?
Yeah.
Those designers who are stuck in a constant reflux of imitation, Jay, to your point, like designers across all different industries, if they're just, copy and pasting the same thing a slightly different way, when change does come to their respective industries, I would infer those people who are just in that rut of imitation, doing the same thing a slightly different way, it's going to be a lot harder for them to adapt to anything new that gets thrown at them.
Definitely.
Jay, what were you telling
Absolutely.
me one time where just being away for a certain amount of time, maybe I think you took like a 6 month vacation, and you came back and Adobe had been updated like 4 different times or something along those lines, and you had a designer who was on a version that was even 10 instances older.
It was
right?
it was that he had stepped away
Ah.
and Adobe had updated, and he was literally at his desk freaking out. I don't know what to do. How do I do this? So I sat down with him. I'm like, hey, we can turn back the clock. I mean, I can set up the classic setup for you, but why? We have all of these new tools and these new
Yeah.
opportunities to put in there. I mean, so again,
I don't understand that. So designers also have that bad rap, but they refuse to go forward and they sort
Right.
of reject technology. But I definitely, I mean, to me, I don't understand why you wouldn't embrace it if it's only
Right.
going to make your job easier and give you better tools to emulate or communicate your ideas.
It's a slippery slope.
I'm not disagreeing with either of you, but and I'll take the online software update is sometimes you just want fair warning so that I know where my buttons are. Before you go, wait, swipe left is now swipe right. Come on, I can't send emails, right? So that's the basics. But I want to bring it back to innovate and imitate. Those that imitate, I will challenge this group here to say, I think they do innovate because in many of the brands like you guys, you are innovating in design, in technology, in material, form, function, all of that stuff. Those that imitate, I believe, do innovate because they have to, their core pressure is to imitate. That means their processes have to innovate. How they go to market has to innovate. And as a result, they can go to market usually a lot faster than the bigger brands. They have streamlined and said, you know what? We can't make it exactly because that's why it's imitating. It's not an exact match. But if we limit what we can do with these materials and these colors and these suppliers, I can be to market in like 12 weeks.
Oh, that's a
right?
good point. It doesn't
Refining process.
Yeah, it doesn't just pertain to innovation versus imitation. I think literally is a topic that we can spend talking about every industry that exists, period.
Absolutely.
Right.
And there are like things that you can pick and choose out of it. If you mentioned Burberry, if you have an iconic brand with an iconic style that you want to maintain, then okay, like that's your business model. Your business model literally is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. This is the namesake or the design of our brand. Imitate that, duplicate that across anything else.
Mhm.
But then if you're intelligent, if you're keen, to your point, you're going to innovate every other area of your process to deliver that iconic design to however many people in 100 different ways. So if you don't innovate in other areas, then you'll fall flat.
Right. So
Yeah.
So do you guys, I'm going to guess, but you see imitations of the companies you work for.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. In every tier of distribution, the lower you go, the more imitation is happening.
Say more, Kaskia.
Well, you have your high brands, right?
Right.
Your fashion couture, and then you have your bridge lines, and then your companies that have their own look and uniqueness to them. But then you have sort of your off-price tiers, right? So what their job is to really imitate the high cost items at a lower price point for their
Right.
customers.
Oh, very true. So they're trying to get to an area where maybe these other brands say that's not our space. We need to have this higher quality,
Mhm.
Right.
brushed satin that is blessed by the Dalai Lama with hand crushed, I don't know, whatever dyes. You have your portfolio in tiers. And so some of the imitators or others try to go into the lower tiers with something that fits. It's a great example.
And they have a space. I mean,
They do.
really, the off-price business is the only business that kept alive during COVID. So in any economical situation, they survive.
I'm going to end with one more question then. COVID has pushed everybody to innovate.
To innovate.
To innovate.
Yeah, I think people were, I'll go one step further. I don't think it pushed people into innovation. I think it
Kick them.
bludgeoned and beat and tied them around the neck and drug them into being forced to innovate. It
Absolutely.
forced design to pay attention to new technologies so they could do
Yeah.
things away from the office. It forced the execution teams to communicate in an entirely different way because we couldn't just fly across the world and see this stuff in person.
Right.
It forced, merch and sales to be able to trust and rely on data and information instead of just being able to walk down the hall or go to a studio room and be able to see and hold and touch, to your point, Shoshana, touch these things. And it really gave birth to new technologies. I am both excited and afraid about the receding tide. It was like all of a sudden, the moon made the waves come in really fast, and a bunch of stuff got messed up, and the things that survived are there. Now that tide is slowly coming back, and people are going back to the office, and they are picking up, old habits. How much will the industry that was forced to innovate push back on those people who are comfortable doing it the old ways? It's an opportunity.
Yeah, we've done that. I'll speak to that because, so many things that we have learned have allowed us to streamline processes, and we've just kept going because why would we go back, right? I mean, certain things are tangible, so we have to keep the same, like in-person meetings, touching and feeling, but a lot of different processes have been better and quicker and have made quicker decisions. So we've kept those processes. So I would say it's a half and half.
And even if it's a half and half, I don't think you take 2-3 steps forward in innovation and then take the same 3 steps back. I mean, we're doing a whole thing on quotes here, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So you might have people who want to go back to that, but you can't. We've pulled everyone so far along into being remote. How do you work digitally? How do you communicate digitally? How do you do all of this stuff? Not everybody's going to keep on that path, but some will pull back. But we're already all in a boat rowing in one direction. So there could be one, or it's not going to change the shift and direction of that boat.
One would hope.
More.
Strength of leadership.
One would hope, and I don't even think leadership would change it. So I think it's a healthy discussion between innovate and imitate. And I think, again, no one's saying pros, one's bad and one's good. As we said, imitate also innovates, and innovate, it bees for balance. We're going to stay that way. But I think everyone's given some wonderful examples that, we can share. And at the end of the day, I continue to say brands want smarter designers, right? It's not just being good at what you do, it's being smarter about how you do it. And applying that thought process of continuous improvement. What did I learn? It's not my problem. It's their problem. It's their technology. Get that tinkering feel. And I think that's what I'm going to ask for our next podcast is innovation labs, the value of having that tinker mentality on site. Because I think that's really important to what some of you guys each spoke about this evening.
Great.
All about it.
Yeah. So Kaskia, Jason, Jay, Ryan, guys, thank you for this wonderful conversation. And I appreciate it. It's been great.
Thanks for having me.
Shoshana.
Yeah.
This is Shoshana Brigette from Color Karma. Have a wonderful and colorful day.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.